With that, we will move into our regular items on the agenda. First, we have the consideration of minutes from December the 27th, 2022. We have a special meeting, public hearing, and regular session all encapsulated in that. So I'd entertain any questions or amendments to the minutes at this time. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the consideration of accounts payable, receivable, and payroll registers. We have a list 529 and 530. And questions on the bills, Mr. Gladden?
Don't we have some more minutes to?
Well, I thought the motion that we made was to approve them all.
Oh, well, no, fine, okay,
Okay.
good.
Was that the motion you recorded, Gina?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Ms. Hughes?
I have most of my questions answered this afternoon. I'm telling you, I want you all to know that Donna can answer almost anything, and I am so impressed. That's neither here nor there. Tim, actually, I have a question for you. It's on 529. The locator kit, is this like a new one, an extra one, a broken one?
It was a replacement.
It was a replacement just because it needed to be upgraded or wore out or?
Well, with all the locates, massive.
Well, yeah, we've had
lately, we
massive,
couldn't do
as
it
these
just-
ladies and gentlemen know.
We couldn't do it with just one, so yeah, we had to.
Okay, thank you. That's really all the thing I knew. I wanted to know if it was a replacement or a repair or.
Okay. There's no other questions on the bills. Entertain a motion to pay them.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to our committee and commission reports. First, we have Budget and Finance chaired by Mr. W.J. Pitt. W.J.?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no items on the old business and the new business. We have finance and statements shared by Scott Evans. We have one in our packet. He handed out one additional tonight. John?
Thank you, WJ. I'll start. Sales tax for January was another really good number. Between sales and home rule tax, we received $359,095. That's well, it's better than December, and it's better than last year this time, to the tune of about $28,000. So that continues to be a really good trend, I guess we'll call it. So you'll see that we did end the year at 4.1 million. So hopefully we can match that again this year. We'll see what happens with conditions. So the next one on the next page is the comparison of the general fund actual expenditures and revenue to budget. And we do this every month, and this is the final one for the year. And for the full year, we spent $5,000 in general fund. For the same period, we budgeted $6.6 million, so we were $826,000 under. And of course, most of that is because we didn't spend the ARPA money, which we of course have budgeted for this year. And a couple, one thing I'll note is that, and just keep in mind that the reason the street department was over by 195, that's about what it was going to be at the time we budgeted. So, and that hasn't been anything different that we didn't know the last few months. We did exceed revenues, $7,319,000 in revenues, and so that was considerably over budget. And again, it was because of timing of some of these issues. So in the year with a surplus of $1,512,000 in general fund. Now, that's a good number, but keep in mind, spending close to $1 million just on the ARPA. So I mean, don't expect me to say this time next year that we have a 1.5 million surplus, because we won't. I mean, I don't think we can. So anyway, but it's good to, again, you don't want to go into a year that you have to sit and have just a meager break even or a loss on that first year too, right? So, I mean, we're kind of building up for that, so that's a good thing. The next group of reports is just the salaries versus budget. And I wasn't quite sure if we were gonna make budget on our salaries across the board, but we did. In December, we actually spent less than budget by about $27,000, and year to date, we spent $149,000 on total salaries across the city, and we actually were $40,000 under budget, so overall. So we had put a little bit of cushion in there, and that was enough to keep us from going over. So that's a good thing too. The healthcare is the next thing. So this is the year-end number on that too. A few weeks ago, I gave you the November number, so it hasn't changed much since then, but the final numbers are that between the general fund and water sewer, we have spent $521,000 in healthcare related costs, and as you see at the bottom, we budgeted $6,652,000. So we ended the year about $140,000 under budget. And again, I think most of it is because we had very, very light usage of the deductibles that come through our HRA. So that's I think where we can year, because it's proven that it's working. So doesn't mean we wouldn't have a year down the road if we take it on the chin, but like I said before, the highest that we've ever seen in 7 or 8 years of experience is about 39% of what the maximum would be, and this wasn't even close to that. So that continues to be a very good formula going forward to keep these healthcare costs under control. So that's a positive thing. The last report in the packet is the year-end numbers on the tourism fund. You know, we did this back in September, October, and so I told you I'd keep you up to date on where that is. So for the year, they brought in almost $84,000 in hotel motel type revenues, and you know, we budgeted 79, so we exceeded our budget on revenue that line, and they spent $84,000, so they had just a slight deficit, and we had budgeted for them to have a surplus of about $9,500, and of course, you know, we've had more than their budget, and we've spent going to be fixed because we, at the time we spoke, we essentially said, well, hey, you know, we know you have from previous years that you want to use and not sit on that money, so now is the time to tell us how much you want to spend so we can put it in the budget. So we did do that, and if you recall, the budgeted numbers for 2023 for tourism were more in line with what they actually spent this year versus the number we did last year. So we shouldn't have that problem, but we will continue to monitor it just like we do any fund. So so that's the deal with that. The last report, cap summary at 12/31. So this is a snapshot of every on that day, and so in checking accounts we had 1.3 million. In money markets we have 2,991,000, and then we have 5,283,000 in CDs. And since then, I can tell you that just this week actually we moved some more money from the money markets, which are not earning a bad rate of return. They're actually earning 1% right now, which is pretty good historically over the last 4 or 5 years. We moved those into some more CD purchases, because even a 6-month CD we can get around 4.25%. So and so we felt like, well, we're going to spend in the RMA tomorrow, and therefore, you know, if we could put some of that in short-term stuff and earn, you know, quite a few thousand before that day comes that we have to write those checks for the construction of the ARPA money, why not? You know, so you'll see that the money market line will go down and the CD line will go up next time I do this report. And it just makes sense. If we can get 4+% on our money and we don't need to spend it tomorrow, why wouldn't we? So, well, anyway, so that's where the cash position was at the end of the year. So Any questions on any of those?
I just was reminded of something on one of the reports, and it was, the summer help was, of course, something that was non-budgeted, and so it shows that line being entirely over budget.
Yeah.
Did we budget money for summer help in this year's budget? Did not? Okay. That's fine. I just, if we're gonna revisit that this year, it's something that.
I think 2022 was somewhat of an anomaly. I think that just the right set of circumstances were there, that the right person and the right jobs came open, that Darren was able to get that done, right? I don't think that's part of his plan, year in and year out to routinely do
The only thing is
that.
that we have a really proactive code person, and that's a compliment, by the way, not a, and I think Darren was seeing more and more labor-type work, yard-wise, cleanup-wise, trash-wise, everything, because of the proactive code person. So the answer is yes, maybe we will have that again.
I think part of our discussion when we hired the summer help was, it was also with Jeff Hallway retired.
He was going to retire, and we wanted to try to get someone, you're right, that we could put in
And
to
if
fill
we hired
the
that person
full-time.
who was a summer help on full-time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct,
I
and he
remember
just
that,
had it, by the way, a 90-day review, and has been, he's off of probation now.
Okay, well, that question crossed my mind when I saw that. That's all I had.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Jeff. There's no other items that are new business, any public comment under budget and finance? Hearing none, we can move out of budget and finance.
AWJ takes the building and grounds, chaired by John Evans. John?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no old business, and we have no new business. Public comment, or not from the council.
All right. Takes us to community relations, chaired by Mr. Mike Austin. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. There's no old business to discuss, no new business to discuss. Is there any public comments regarding community relations? If not, Mayor, we can move on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Austin. That case is public improvement, chaired by Mr. Mike Fash. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, we have no old business and we have no new business listed unless there be public comment. That being said, we can close public comment.
All right, thank you. That takes us to public work, chaired by Mr. Gary McCall. Gary?
Thank you, Mayor. Under old business, discussion regarding the cost for the saltwater storage. And Darren is not here tonight. I talked to him on it. He has a few figures together, but I guess we'll move it to the next meeting, so he probably be here to discuss what he has got.
That's fine, and I did talk to Mitch Burdick with Jackson County the other day, and he was non-committal, but he also said that he wouldn't rule out the idea of the city partnering with the county in some way. He just had to, see what that looked like. He also did mention that those storage areas that are, I guess, made out of heavy plastic or canvas or whatever, he said that they had used those at a previous place where he was a county engineer, and that they would usually get 3 to 4 years out of one, and they cost around, I think, $3,000 or $4,000. So, anyway, just a little bit of feedback I got.
Darren had looked at some of them too. And just no matter what you do, if you use concrete curves that they've got for the wall, you're still gonna have to pour a floor, if we're building it.
Right. Well, we'll continue to hold that agenda item over.
Under new business, it's the consideration of city-wide groundwater ordinance. I think everybody's got a copy in their packet.
And for the council's information, that the draft that you have in your packet has gone to the legal division of IEPA. They've looked at it, it meets all of their requirements. So if the city council does approve it, then I have an extra copy to be signed and certified and sent on to them.
So do I have your assurance that the next time somebody wants a groundwater ordinance for this specific 40 square foot area, that I can send this to them and it will cover it?
That's what I'm told. And my understanding also, once I send this to them and they have it on record, it won't have to be requested, they'll have it. So if they're doing a remediation site, whoever that contractor would be doing the site and the owner looking for the no further remediation letter, they shouldn't have to come to us to get a further certified copy of the ordinance, once it's on file with the IEPA.
Famous last word.
Schedule a parade.
Yeah.
I make a motion to adopt this new ordinance.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
All in favor? Nay? Ayes have it. The next on the agenda is discussion regarding clearway construction issue. I think we got a few people here, but I don't think it's any of them that digging any holes and leaving the sidewalk full of dirt. You know, I've never seen work construction all my life, and I've never seen a crew as dangerous as this one. They leave the holes open on the weekend, they leave the sidewalks full of dirt. They're in the road at night when it's dark, with no lights on it, anything they got. It might be a truck, lights on top, but I mean, they're just terrible. Right way to put it.
I did have Mr. Blake, our city attorney, review our agreements with Clearwave and their predecessor, and I'd like him to just address the council as far as what he found.
Okay, I've reviewed the right-of-way license agreement that was entered March 7, 2010. There are provisions that you'd expect that installation is to be done in a workmanlike manner, in a safe manner. They're required to obtain any permits that would be required, obey, any laws, codes there would be. The city code does address excavations, which would be in the streets, public ways, including tunneling, provides the requirement of a permit. My information is no permit has ever been applied for or issued. So, the city council can demand that, the plans be submitted, including plans regarding the street, traffic control, safety control for street purposes as part of that application process, and that work not continue until a permit is going to be issued by the city. Basically approving those plans, whatever there would be submitted. That's included in our city code on excavations too. Street traffic, safety matters. So it's, of course, in the, if there's provisions, citations, tickets could be issued if that were the case, if problems persist, or if a permit is issued and those provisions under which it's issued are not complied with, including public safety matters. I also understand that there's usually locates, but there's still a lot of other utilities being damaged in the process, which was also violations of under the license agreement and the city code.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Tim Lee is our water department foreman. Tim, do you want to discuss any of the various issues that we've had?
I would just kind of touch on what Gary said. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Working late nights, after hours, after working hours, I feel dark, after dark, no advanced warning signs, not emergency lights on the trucks. I have an issue with, I found this today, we had to go back and fix a small leak. Probably wouldn't make much of it, but it's a tape measure that's on our service line, and right above that is a piece of conduit, 3 inches. 3 inches from the service line on top of this. I just don't think that's just not quality work in my opinion. We wouldn't lay a service line on top of the gas line in that sense. And I realize that it's in, with the fiber optic is inside conduit, so it's not really gonna hurt. But when you backfill this, the compaction of it is gonna press down. Eventually that water surface is going to be affected by that. I fear how much of that on North 16th Street isn't exactly like this. Today we went to Kukio Drive and ran into a crew. Charlie and I went over and we asked them to stop working. They weren't supposed to be working at the time anymore. They're still kind of on freeze. And they were boring about 18 inches in the ground. They had dug up each water service, and their idea is just to barely clear each water service. That does not give us the room to overdig anything like a repair. Now, obviously, we'll call Julie 10 years from now, and they'll come out, they'll mark all the utilities, we'll know those utilities are there, but we're gonna be working around their utilities. I always just figured that it would be nice if we're at 2 feet and we're at 4 feet, so if you're at 6 feet, and depending on if you're running with, horizontal or vertical with however we're doing it, anywhere we cross, we need to have separation of those two utilities, so that we can maintenance what we have, and then we're not gonna put everyone's always heard the rumors, if you hit a fiber optic line, it's $10,000 an hour to get it fixed, or whatever it might be. Well, we will call Julie, we will be careful in these situations, but if we could put this in a different way, in a safer way, with more distance between utilities, we're gonna minimize those mishaps in the future, where we may get into a utility. Now it seems like it's a race, and it seems like it's just a race. Get it in as fast as possible, and who cares, the quality. We put in almost 8,000 feet in the past 18 months of water main. I do go out and check on my crew. I don't see a lot of quality control in these crews. You go out, no one can give you an answer, you can't communicate with a lot of people, that's not their fault, I understand. But there's no one really telling them, you need to be this deep or this deep, and actually ensuring that those depths are being met. I can send my crew out, but hey boss, we got 500 feet of water main in the ground today. Yeah, but if it's a foot deep and it's supposed to be 4 foot deep, it's not doing me any good. Yeah, it's in the ground, but it's not gonna do us any good. Now it's gotta be redone. So those are my concerns. I think I passed them on to the council, I passed them on to Nathan through a few phone calls and things of that nature. Other than that, the short thing, like Gary had mentioned, leaving equipment in the road. You drive down at night, you might see an air compressor just sitting in the middle of the highway in front of mom's house, and not even a cone. Your headlights is all that keeps you,
I told you that
jumps
same-
up on you.
That same highway, I came home from work one day and they just had a pickup truck pulled side. Lanes with nobody in it or anywhere around it. That's how they blocked the traffic, was just pulled the pickup truck sideways across both lanes.
And even something so simple as a 2-foot pile of dirt without a cone is dangerous at nighttime for old people.
Well, I mean, it seems to be, it should be the same standard. It should be a lesser standard. I mean, when we go out and work in the middle of the night, it's inconvenient, but my guys are like, get signs out. Make sure we got good lighting. Make sure you run your emergency lights. Wear your vests. I mean, there's just certain things that you have to abide by. I mean, OSHA will pay us to visit, and anyone in this room could just drive by and just say, I don't like the way those guys are doing this tonight. Call OSHA, whether we're legal or not. They're going to show up. Why OSHA's not showed up on these jobs, I have no clue. I mean, I feel like I could go outside and do something, just put up 5 signs instead of 6, and they're gonna, they'll be right, I'm knocking on your door, asking you why you didn't have a wrapping around the signage.
Mr. Glad, did you have something?
And I think we've all observed this, but I want to make a point of it. These crews aren't being supervised hardly at all. I mean, it's easy to see as you drive down the street what's going on, and there's no supervision. And that's backing up what Tim is saying. It's,
Somebody else has something down here?
And communication is very, very, you cannot communicate with them, just to get them to move out from in front of my driveway so my friend can go back to work. Practically had to move heaven and earth to get them to understand that I needed that meeting to go out from my driveway. The communication thing and supervision, both, it just adds in something.
Chief McBride?
Just to tell you from the fire department side, we've had to respond to several gas leaks since they've been doing this project. I spoke with Ameren personnel, and they informed me that they were doing the boring before the Julies were even completed. Sometimes before the Julies were even started, they were blind boring. That's just a recipe for disaster. The supervision, again, to Mr. Gladden's comment, I pull up and there's nobody I can talk to. I finally gas leak in Spanish, and I play it over the speaker so that at least somebody will point, because there's nobody that I can communicate with. There's no supervision for these people. I still have 3 or 4 outstanding invoices through our Speller Pays ordinance that remain unpaid. That's over $2,000 of expense to the fire department in responding and overtime and everything else.
All right. I want to give, of course, our Clearway representatives an opportunity to say what they have to say. It's my opinion that the council should vote to, and I think the city attorney can better describe the step that needs to be taken, but communicate to Clearway that all work needs to cease and desist until there is a permit process established with them that spells out specific, we'll talk about the distances between the utilities and other things that we've discussed here tonight that are going to have to be met before anything can start up again. So, that being said, Mr. Iser.
A little bit on that, what you were saying there with the permitting. I think the first 6 hours of my day-to-day was spent on the phone with just residents in the town. There's no rhyme or reason where these crews are at. They're on Tina Drive this morning, then they're on Keel Drive, and it's, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's all over the place. I think a little bit of the communication with the permits, a set designated area in town needs to be established where we can tell our residents where, this is Clearwave and they are in this ward or this section of town. Like today when we went out on Keel Drive, the Julie was good for tomorrow at 8 a.m. and it was today at 3:30 that they were digging.
Right before lunch.
Right at lunch. So
before lunch, yeah.
And on my side with the code stuff, I went just a quick trip. You can see it at 4:30 this afternoon. I put these pictures together of random spots, and this was in a 5-minute drive of going around finding this stuff. On 11th Street, there's 6 to 8 holes that are 3 foot deep that are left open. There's boxes open, lids open. When I was going up 11th Street today, there's actually 2 kids that were playing right by this open hole. Not good. There's
That's been on South 15th too.
yeah, and not to completely knock them at all. The last 2 pictures are some that are fantastic. In this, their grass is growing. It's short. It's good. The dirt's been leveled off. Like I said earlier, my concern in 3-4 months when we start getting grass growing up, and we've got this front page where there's 4 foot tall weeds growing in here because the homeowner's not going to go mow this or weed eat it or what have you. I'm going to have more issues with that. So I think the crews can do it because it's been done in town. It's just not being done everywhere.
Well,
Mr. Lee.
also, I'd like to see, during discussion of the permit process, that maybe we should limit the amount of permits that we have open at a time. Until those permits, you see the job completed and you see the backfill there, the grass is not necessarily growing, but there's 100% backfill involved there. Because we have to also keep in mind resources. I mean, I have a crew of 6. One of my guys is a water meter reader. I do most of the water samples. So I have 4 other guys. We have to maintenance sewers. We have to fix leaks. We have to change valves, and there's a lot of maintenance involved. And here lately, it's basically been, I'd say more than 50% of our day is made up by dispersing locates and trying to get out. And a lot of times these crews call in more than they can handle. So then they're calling in another big stack for us to go back and freshen up that they haven't got to because those tickets expire after 14 days. So that's another concern of mine is just the resources. I mean, I even had a company came back, I don't know if I think they were in Orlando, they came back after Christmas, they called in, located, said, remark, because the marks are covered in snow. I'm not gonna go out and spend a case of paint on marking water lines for them to be gone tomorrow. Just something else food for thought.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Colombo, I'm not sure if you're going to speak the group.
I'll start by saying thank you, because everybody has given us far more grace than we deserve with the way that things have gone in Murphysboro. And this isn't a surprise to folks as I feed this up the food chain, because this isn't the only town that similar issues have occurred in. I'm limited in my capacity of what I can do. I'm an observer and a messenger, and kind of a firelighter on our end to get things going. In fact, just today, after a month and a half of being on pause in Breeze, Illinois, we finally got the go-ahead to return to work there, paying invoices for their fire department, doing proper construction and backfilling some of the things that we needed to fill, taking on personal damages and property damages as needed. So our construction structure is going to have an idea of actually, hey, here's how we need to proceed here. I think putting the proper controls on us is going to help bring this to a head like it needs to be, get us going with construction in a way that needs to be, because as long as I've been fielding phone calls from Tim, I haven't been able to give him the solutions that he deserves, right? Because these lines should be 2 foot under his water lines. All I can say is when you guys have the official motions that I can pass up the food chain and say, you know, we're going to stop until we start fixing our issues. You know, that's kind of our next steps on my end, right? I take what you all act on here tonight, deliver that up, make sure that the message is clear like it has been in our other markets, and hope that on the other side of this, our construction teams are going to get their head right and do, I think, the core of this, right, which is the quality control, the oversight. I had a chance to bring in our corporate government relations person and meet with Mayor Stevens last week, right? And in that conversation, you know, we kind of, you know, understood, hey, quality control is top of the line issue, right? And everything that falls in behind that, right? The speed, having multiple crews in town, just blasting through stuff causes the issue. That's a quality control problem. Nobody being on the ground and overseeing these crews, who are subcontractors, but nevertheless represent Clearwave just the same, right? So I'm to say thank you, and then to say I'm sorry that this is fallen apart in this manner, and I appreciate you all for giving us as much slack as you have thus far. I think the next motions that you all take will put us in a position to right our ship and establish kind of a long-term relationship with the community that's better than what these first 3 months have been. So, and I can't say thank you enough to Tim. I have, if it wasn't for his eyes on the ground and him being very clear with me about what our issues are, I would have far more blind spots to what we're discussing now. But thanks to him and everything that he's been able to do and the work that he's put in, it has made this a very clear message that we can send up the food chain to get these problems fixed. And I don't expect you to believe me until you see it. But it may take a little bit of time. Like I said, it took a month and a half to get stuff right with Breeze. But we're gonna make it work, because even if it's not my job, it's kind of my mission right now. Appreciate y'all for that.
Thank you.
Richard, being they're working without permits and stuff, can't we just shut them down till they get their permits?
Yes.
So, in other words, we could shut them down tomorrow and they can't come back to work until they get everything right with the city.
That'd be correct. We could, as part of the permit that is issued, we can set forth those standards that have been discussed of what has to be done in issuance of that permit, and line those out in the permit process. And if they aren't complied with, then the city could shut them down for not complying with that approved permit. Or issue.
That's a question. Can that include redoing the ones that have not been done properly?
Well, as far as going in and,
It sounds like this problem's been created by what they've done so far.
Well, wherever there's been damage, yes, that would have to be. That would be
Jim
part
was
of
saying there's probably going to be problems down the line.
Well, that's a little more difficult because, allowing it to proceed without insisting on a permit sooner, those lines that may have been in already. We don't have anything set forth now as far as those specifications, to my knowledge.
So I saw Chief Ellenmeyer first. Did you have something?
Yeah, I think if you're going to shut them down, can you I think they need to go back for personal safety and fill those holes in and stuff, and if you guys could oversee that with your eyes, because I think everybody's lucky up till now, there hadn't been personal injury.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have other, go ahead, Mark.
I have a question about the permit, and I'm not quite sure who could answer it, but is a permit for this citywide, or would this be for, because, I
We
mean,
can
there was conversation about they're on Keogh Drive here, and this morning they were on Tina Drive, and then they were, I think that, should we know where they are in that permit, in a timeline for that? I don't know, I'm just
I
asking.
think we could craft the permitting process however we want to in terms of our provisions. I think that what I would like to see happen is Tim Lee, Charlie Isert, and Darren Mills get together, perhaps with me, perhaps with Gary, and just figure out what you want the permit to look like. What are the provisions that you want to have included in there, and then that'll be the permit.
But are we gonna run into a process of, well, you haven't figured out what the permit is yet, we couldn't even have gotten one? I don't know if they could have or not. I mean, I'm not trying to be a devil's advocate, but obviously they need a permit, but what I don't want to happen is, I want us to have as much control over this as possible as a city, and I don't want anybody to be able to look back and say, you don't have a permit ready.
I think we already have a permit.
Okay, that's
Currently,
what-
it's just we want to change one that we have.
No permit has been issued.
We don't-
Hasn't been-
no.
We have format for permits for this.
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I don't know. I think we'd have to craft that.
But if one was applied for, we could have issued.
Set the, yes, setting some
Within
parameters for
a very
the
short period of time. If they applied for one, we would have gotten one pretty shortly.
If one, yes, if it would,
Okay.
it could have been addressed by the city right off the bat and said,
Okay.
you cannot begin this project, without going
Okay.
through permit process.
Thank you.
That could have been done at the
Well,
beginning of
under
that.
our city ordinance too, they gotta prove so much insurance, have they done that?
We don't have that on our permitting process. Let me look. I believe that's part of the right-of-way agreement,
Okay.
what they have to have as far as liability.
We have a contractor's agreement in the city where you would come in and you would apply, you would show your
That-
license and operate, also your insurance.
Yeah.
Like we do with our plumbers or carpenters or
Yeah.
electricians.
Well, I'll ask you this question too, are we in favor of shutting them down completely tomorrow
Yes.
till they get everything?
With, I think, the exception that Chief Ellenmeyer brought up of open holes being filled to eliminate safety hazards.
Gary, this gentleman in the hat wanted to say something here.
I was just gonna say, my name's Dylan Gamble, and I actually just moved to Murphysboro, and I work with the MDU department on the multi-dwelling and access agreement. So one of the things that's awesome, I've actually been going around looking at the crews, trying to meet them to get more supervision. So, I just moved off 14th Street, so one of the things that is my goal, I love this town right now, so my goal is to go around, get more supervision in this area, because they're right on top of me, and not have holes, because that looks bad if it's right out in front of my house and I'm living in this area. So I just want y'all to know, I moved here and I love it, and that is one of my goals, to help y'all and help Nathan with the community relations management to get this fixed, because I love this company also.
One thing that concerned me was the stuff they leave on the sidewalks and all over, is people that are blind
Yes, sir.
and people in wheelchairs.
Yes, sir.
And walking with crutches and stuff. Don't take much mud to put them out from under them. And some of these holes are not over 6 inches deep, and some of them are probably 2.5 foot deep, it's just, and we've got a lot of money invested in the fire department going out, the water department, that we're gonna have to try to get back to. So, throw a light on that.
Sorry, Gary. I saw Don with his hand up, John also.
Yeah.
Do we know how much, how much more, what percentage has been done and what is undone? I mean, do you have any idea?
I would say it is probably 15% or less in terms of overall. If I'm going off of just maps that I've seen recently, but I'm not overseeing construction, so I wouldn't trust my judgment on that.
Let's say we have 85% more to expect.
That is my guess, just by looking at what comes through on our market release things. Now, the market release information that I get may be well ahead of what construction is being done as well. So I'm, again, I'm more answering off the cuff than I am answering with accuracy.
The 15 being what's been done?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that as city council directs Clearwave to cease all new construction effective at midnight tonight, and that they repair and fix all work in progress, and that they won't be allowed to continue until such time we have a permitting mechanism in place.
All right?
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Nays? Ayes have it.
Yes.
I've got a running list, I guess a hit list if you want to call it that, with complaints that I've been tallying at my office. If you have any others that you have in your ward, you can forward them to me, and I can send myself and Blaine out tomorrow and try to scour the town to find all the extra holes that are open and so forth and so on. But if you guys have any others that you know of, I can keep a tally with that.
I got Mike next.
It's not in the motion, but I think also once the holes or the parts that are damaged, that they go fixed, I think that maybe Charlie needs to go out there, which he probably will, to approve it before they just say it's fixed and move on. So each time they go to the site, maybe Charlie could approve it or deny it.
Or maybe instead of, at the close of each day or whenever you say that, the current openings are filled and things are made in a safe manner for the meantime until we can get this worked out. I don't want Charlie to have to go out to each.
Well, right, he could do it once in a while. Whenever.
Perhaps once a day.
I still think it should be approved by the city before we just send them out.
I agree with that, Mike.
You got something?
Yeah. Charlie, where the areas that don't have sidewalk, what's the right of way distance?
But each street varies. Today, I thought there was one that should have been 15 feet and it was 20, and I was off on it. Actually, the right of way was on the other side of the sidewalk, which isn't very common in town. But on Keel Drive, it for sure was. It was 2 foot over on the other side of the sidewalk. Generally, our sidewalks are the right of way. Anything from the edge towards the street is the right of way. But yeah, I mean that's going to take a lot of doing there as well for the right of ways to establish that as well. I mean, we go back to the book and.
It would depend on the width of the sidewalk. Some sidewalks are 3 foot wide, some are 5 foot wide, so. The ones that are 4 and 5 foot wide are right, at least, that's usually the mark of the edge of, customer's edge of the easement.
Well, because I've had some calls from people who don't have sidewalk and, they're basically digging in their yard.
Yes.
My response was, it's probably the right of way, but
If you have a 40 foot right of way on the road, basically just imagine measuring from the center of the road, 20 or 15 or 20 feet to one each side, depending on if it's 30 feet or 40 feet.
This is going to be the ongoing issue, like I said, come summertime when people think the right of ways are their yards. Some don't think they're there, that they have to maintain them, so dealing with this 6 months from now is going to be the issue with it.
Thank you.
That's all we have on this issue at this time. Is there any public comment on public works? There are none there, we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much.
And again, I'm sorry that this is something that we've got to work through, but I appreciate everybody and your candor in all of this. I'm using every bit that I got to solve the problems, and it may take a little bit, but we're here to see the process through.
Tell Mark Golden I
No.
All right, we'll move on to public safety. Under public safety, we have no old business, we have no new business. Is there any public comment on public safety? Coming out of that, we'll go to personnel chair by Ms. Barber Hughes. Barb?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no old business, no new business. Is there any public comment on personnel? We can move out of that name.
All right. Under the mayor's report, I have one item, discussion regarding awnings. The Worthing family has, of course, purchased a Farmer Hardware and Pets building. They also are operating Cutting Edge Catering is the name of and it is, the food's really good. Anyway, I was having a conversation with Kyler Worthing recently, and he asked me, who owns this metal awning on the front of my building? And I said, well, I don't know. Angelo Farino says the Chamber of Commerce put them up in the 1970s, so I don't know really who owns them. Half of it's attached to our sidewalk, half of it's attached to your building. He wanted to know if the street department would help, would assist in the removal of that awning. And I, called a few members of the council, but I wanted to bring it, and nobody was opposed after just polling a couple folks. But I wanted to bring it to full council because it's half attached to private property, it's half attached to city property. They said they'd be willing to, let us have the remnants of it to take and scrap if we, have the money from that. I don't know what that would bring. But,
45 cents a pound.
and Darren, I talked to Darren, and he said he had no issue with us, as they had time dedicating his crew to do that. Does anybody have any objection?
I just want to say, and I don't, for what it's worth, many years ago on city council, Teresa Blankenship and I tried to get those awnings down to awnings for that. And Russell Breeding told me that the people that own the buildings own the awnings. And that we weren't going to touch his awning. So,
No?
so what is?
I heard that too. Just say, I'll put their shoes up.
Now then we have a
I'm generally not opposed, I thought about it more since we talked, and, there's several still there, whether those owners want them taken down or not, I don't know. Are there any of the Mercy funds left? No?
Well, we have took them down before when the snows caved them in, and safety issue. But we have took awnings down here in town. I mean, and if somebody's wanting to open up a business, we can go a little ways with them, but just taking the awning down, I don't see a problem with that. Our guys can take them down. I wouldn't want them putting them up.
Right.
But the demo of them, I don't see why it's a bad deal for the guys to go up and take that down.
Okay. Ms. Hughes?
When we had the grant to get those beautiful awnings and the old ones were taken down at that point through whatever process, I can't remember who did it, but I remember talk of having to do things to the building to make it safe or, when that came off, because it was actually attached to some of its structure, thank you. I have no objections to just taking it down. I'm thrilled to death about that building. I'd love to have that down. I just think that we need to think about liability and have some kind of agreement with them that their building, if we help take it down, we're not responsible for what it did to the building.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, I think.
I'm thrilled to death they want it down and that they're willing to do that, but to ask us to even help, but I think we should cover our backs.
Okay, that's fair.
That's what I was thinking about, some process or some procedure for it.
Yeah.
Mr. Austin?
Yeah, that awning, is it connected to any other businesses down the street? I mean, by taking
I
down,
can't remember how far it goes anymore.
There's still a few.
so by taking that down, would that affect the buildings down the?
I don't think there's any right next to it that still have those copies.
The hardware and pets one is sort of isolated.
Yeah, and so is George's. He still
Yes.
has the old one.
Well, George bought and paid for a brand new one of those awnings about 12 years ago. And
I don't think we'll ever pay for that.
He wants his on it.
Yeah, that's okay. I didn't know that, but I think there's a few left, Mike, but none of them are connected to that. Yeah.
Mr. Pittman?
My question is, what are people gonna tie their strings to reserve their apples?
Like that.
All right, well, so what I'm hearing is that everybody's all right with it if we can draft some sort of basic liability waiver or something. Mr. Blake?
I could put something simple together.
Okay.
I think Mr. Iser had something.
Oh, well,
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing with as long as on the kind of the building permits side of it, I always think of the front of the building, like Mr. Robin's building, you know, how the front of his brick was
Yeah.
falling in and the issues we had with that, and I also think of, and Chief Elmeyer told me about the sidewalks in DuQuoin holding up buildings. So, I see the liability there when you start pulling an awning, who knows if that awning is all aluminum holding up a building.
well, the Sawzall can remove things without totally removing them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
All right,
we
well,
want in front of that building coming down.
I think I have the direction we need without really the need of a motion. I think Richard Blake understands what we need and we'll go from there. That's all I have under the mayor's report. I'll go to council member request, Ms. Hughes.
I don't have anything, thank you. Happy New Year, y'all.
Yeah. Ms. Curry-Winston,
I don't have anything, thank you.
Mr. Austin,
Nothing, Mayor, thank you.
Fort Tom Ziker,
Thank you.
Mr. Pittman, Mr. Hervis.
I do, for information for council, and I guess anyone who's interested, I attended the Southwest Connector Highway meeting, is that what?
Right.
We're very fortunate to have Mayor Stevens as the new chair of that, and the former chair was very active as well. And I encourage anyone that wants to attend, and it was good to have Murphysboro there, because otherwise there would not have been anyone in Southwest Perry County present. So just encourage you to kind of follow it. The mayor's doing a great job soliciting information and support, and I might want to tell them kind of where we're at on the...
Sure. So if you want the project, the website is siconnector.com, and we've had that up now for 4 years. And this is the idea that dates back to the 60s to expand 127 in one form or the other from Murphysboro up to St. Louis. This latest concept is to go to Pinckneyville, swing west, and expand 127, 154, and Route 3 from 2 to 4 lanes from Murphysboro to Waterloo. So, in September last year, I was appointed chairman of that group. It takes in Jackson County, Perry, Randolph, and Monroe County governments, cities, businesses, nonprofits. We have over 150 people that have signed off on letters of support. I went to Springfield last week, met with the Illinois Speaker of the House, with a number of other key representatives to make our case, because the bottom line is this, that we need $800 million from the feds to build this highway, and we need $200 million from the state. And the federal money is there if you can just compete for it. And we're scoring very highly on our grant applications with the federal government, but we are not scoring very highly with the state because of the metric that they use to score this project, because of traffic flow and other reasons. They say it doesn't score good enough. So right now, we're working hard to lobby IDOT and the state to say, look, if you'll commit $20 million a year for 10 years, we can build $1 billion highway that would do a tremendous amount of good for southwestern Illinois. So that's as succinct as I can present it without this going on forever. And that's what we talked about today. And we actually did get, I guess it's also important to mention, all of the various municipalities and counties that are involved all committed today to giving $500, which will be held by the Randolph County Progress Committee, so that if I go to Springfield, or if we need to print reports or whatever, that the city of Murphysboro isn't footing those expenditures. So we've got basically a $6,000 fund now to help fund our operations. Because I didn't feel like, my last trip to Springfield, or whatever, the city paid for the hotel, but I didn't want to carry on like that forever without asking for additional support.
So if you know anybody with influence between here and Waterloo, give them a call.
Yeah. Yeah, because we have 3 years to apply for this federal money. That's how much money is, what is it, a trillion is 1,000 billion, and this is a $4 trillion bill. So, and I just need 1 billion.
That is just way above my head.
Right.
You just have to get them to spend it here.
All right.
That's it, thank you.
Mr. McCall?
I have nothing.
Mr. Bastian? I have nothing, thank you. Mr. Glad?
I want to thank Chief McBride and Charlie Isert for the fine report they did on the inspection of the Spears building.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate
Oh,
that.
yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was a good report.
We'll go to department head requests, and Attorney Blake.
A quick update on the Spears building. I was provided, in pursuant to the real estate purchase agreement, Alderman Pittman and Scott Evans got to me a letter from Mike Cripps at First Bank and Trust, giving verification that the city does have sufficient funds required to complete the purchase, which was part of the agreement. I've delivered that to the Spears. As Alderman Gladden pointed out, the inspection has been completed by Chief McBride and our code enforcement officer, Isert. We also have back our title commitment. No issues show up with the title. The only things noted are some easements. 2 of those easements are for utilities that serve the premises by Ameren. You'll see IPS when the easements were signed. There are 2 easements that show up. They're no longer current easements. They dealt with the building to the north of that property that was there before the past history, before the city acquired that property. The building's, of course, no longer there. Those easements no longer have any effect. So everything is ready at this point to move forward to closing as soon as we are able to schedule a closing date. By the contract, the outside date to do the closing will be March 30th. In speaking with the Spears, when I had delivered the documents to them, they would like to do that sooner whenever they're in a position to, when they've finished vacating the building. And weather permitting, they can, would hope to do that more so the earlier part of March. But they said that they would keep me updated when they're more so ready to set up a closing date.
All right.
That's just a quick update.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ripley?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Nothing, thanks.
Chief McBride?
Nothing, sir, thank you.
Mr. Pellmeyer?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Van Waring?
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Volley?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Beggs?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Iser?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Lee?
Real quick, I just want to commend the street department and some of the water guys for, we experienced some bad weather during the holidays, and I don't think I've been here since then. But, we had to prepare a lot of equipment for snow removal, salt spreading, and salt spreaders don't always run right, so, we're always tinkering with those. But I think they did a pretty good job with the equipment that they had available to them. And then myself and a few other guys got 31 call-outs for after hours. They were for frozen water lines and crawl spaces, and some were even on second floors. They were ran down inside their living rooms. So we were moving quite a bit during that bad weather. I'm glad to see it gone.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to give the guys a little pat on the back and just advise the council how hard they worked during those times.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Mr. Gladson?
Nothing.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.